All right, ladies and gentlemen, first things first, good morning or good afternoon, depending on the time you're listening to this. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all safe and I hope you're all healthy. Um, Hopefully, everything's going well. I hope all your schoolwork is getting done and you're not too bored being at home. I hope you're also realizing just how much fun school can be, especially when we're around one another. So, today we're going to take a look at Israel and the Middle East. The last lecture that I posted, I went through the Holocaust again. I also talked about the Nuremberg trials. So, your notes were pretty much should be up to about this point right here. The goal today is to get through the rest of the slides. That way, your notes packet is looking nice and clean. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at where we left off, which was the Nuremberg trials. Nuremberg being that city there in Germany. And it was called the Nuremberg trials because that's where the trials of these Nazi leaders was held. Now, these trials took place for a very lengthy amount of time. In fact, it spanned from 1945 into 1946. And he had a lot of these individuals who were Nazis who were charged with crimes against humanity. We talked about those Nazis who were hanged, how they ended up being burned in the very same ovens that they sent a lot of Jewish individuals in those concentration camps. I also mentioned last time how a lot of these German Nazi leaders did not show a lot of remorse for the decisions that they took part in that cost 11 million lives, including 6 million Jews. But what you should really take out of the Nuremberg trials is right there at the bottom: support for a Jewish state and homeland. Out of the Nuremberg trials, you're going to start to see this movement to get Jewish individuals their own home space. Remember, a lot of individuals were displaced because of this. You had people who fled their home countries. You had people seeking asylum in other countries. You had a large migration of Jewish individuals going to places like Great Britain, going to the United States of America. So after the war, you're going to see the support for a Jewish homeland really start to gain some speed. And that's going to lead towards Israel being founded in 1948. Now, support for a Jewish homeland is going to be known as Zionism. So whenever you hear me refer to Zionism, that is just another word for supporting a Jewish homeland. So Israel will be founded in 1948. We'll get back to Israel right now, but right now, let's take a look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So the United Nations is going to develop this in 1948. This is going to be a response to all of the negative things that happened during World War II, specifically the amount of deaths and the amount of destruction that came about during World War II. And what this Universal Declaration of Human Rights is going to do is going to set standards, not just for any particular nation, but for all nations on the types of rights that all people should have. Seems pretty basic, right? However, it's going to be difficult to enforce. This is going to be difficult to enforce because there's a lot of conflict going on how much other countries should be butting into the business of other countries. So look at it like this. Deep down inside, we all know that people deserve human rights, but how much influence should the United States have when it comes to, say, Germany? Or how much say should France have when it comes to the Soviet Union? And so on and so forth. So there's a lot of conflict amongst people in charge, amongst people within the United Nations on how you're going to enforce this Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In theory, it's a great idea. It's something that I think all of you truly believe in. You believe in rights for human beings, but how do you enforce these things? And that's going to be the negative that comes out of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, moving on, let's talk about the creation of Israel. Again, that's going to take place in 1948. A lot of people are going to support this idea, this creation of Israel. However, there's going to be a country that is not going to be a fan of this, and to this day has conflict with Israel because of its creation, and that's going to be Palestine. Palestine is a mostly Islamic country, and Palestine is going to end up being divided into a Jewish state and a Palestinian state. And Jerusalem is going to be that international city within. This is going to anger Palestinians. So Palestine is a mostly Islamic country that is divided into a Jewish and a Palestinian state, with Jerusalem as its international city. The conflict is going to anger Palestinians to where they start attacking this newly found Israel. Now, Israel will end up winning, and they're going to end up winning because of a lot of help that they had from a lot of stronger nations behind them who were helping them, specifically the United States of America. And because of this win, they're going to claim about half of that Palestinian land. So imagine you being a Palestinian growing up, having to fight for everything that you have, only to have land being taken away from you. That's going to create a lot of conflict. And you can see right there in the red just how much conflict and how often it's going to occur. 1956, 1967, 1973. You're going to have this infighting in a very small, dense area between the Palestinians as well as the Israelis. Now, you have an assignment that you have to do, that Why Can't We Be Friends, that's going to really delve into the conflict between the two. But I'm just going to gloss over a little bit on this particular side right here. In fact, on the next slide, you'll see just how this is created. So on the left-hand side, and I'm going to use the mouse right here. On the left-hand side, you're going to see 1947 Palestine. So you see how it is divided, the yellow part being the area for Muslims, and then the orange part being for Jewish individuals. It's not divided in the best way. In fact, you see it literally is right down the middle in the way that it is divided. Now, fast forward a couple of years, and you're now going to have this large orange area belonging to Israel. That will last up until about 1967. Now, in the far right, you'll see what this looks like since 1967, where you have the divisions within that particular area. This is a very small area right here, very dense area where that fighting still occurs. Now, let's kind of talk about the Suez Crisis of 1956. I'm going to kind of take a left turn here, but I promise you I'll bring it all back. Egypt, which is very nearby the area we're talking about. If you're looking at the map right here, you'll see Egypt down there in the bottom left-hand corner of the map. Egypt is going to be led by President Nasser. Now, he's going to want to kick out foreign countries within the region. That region, and I'm going to go back, that region is going to include all of this. So everything that you see on these maps right here represent that region. Now, he's going to want to kick foreign countries out of this region right here. Why? He has his reasons. But in order to try and kick out these foreign countries within the region, he's going to start taking control of the Suez Canal from the British by force. The British had been in control of that canal for a long period of time since World War II, when they started navigating a lot of the ships who were bringing oil into the Mediterranean Sea during World War II. So Nasser is going to take control of the Suez Canal from the British, and he's going to use military force to do this in 1956. In retaliation, the British, along with the French and the Israelis, are going to attack. So this newfound country, Israel, who has been getting a lot of support and a lot of resources from bigger countries, including Great Britain and France, they are now going to join in the fighting along with their new friends, Great Britain and France. Now, the United States and the Soviet Union, they're going to put pressure on the British and the French and the Israelis to withdraw troops. The United States and the Soviet Union, very, very powerful, especially the United States at this time. The United States did not suffer the type of catastrophes that France and Great Britain did during World War II. Remember, a lot of the war took place within those two locations right there, whereas the United States largely came out of this without a scratch. There wasn't fighting on the United States mainland. So, because that their economy is so well, because they didn't have a lot to rebuild, they're strong. They're able to put that type of pressure on other countries to withdraw troops. So that's exactly what happens, and Egypt will get to keep the canal. What they're able to do is they're going to build Pan-Arabism, which is a type of unity amongst the Arab community. Now, in 1964, you're going to start seeing the PLO, which was the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO. You're going to see that formed in 1964, and it's going to be led by a guy named Yasser Arafat. He's going to be the leader of the PLO. Now, in 1967, Arafat and the PLO, they're going to want to take back land from Israel using military force. They want the help of the other Arab nations in order to do this. Israel catches wind of this, so they go on the attack. They attack Egypt. They attack Jordan, Syria, and Iran. They go after those four countries first, and they do a pretty good job at stifling that arsenal right there. They wipe out the majority of Egypt's air force, and they're going to capture what is known as the Sinai Peninsula. I'm going to go back to the map right here, and you'll be able to see that Sinai Peninsula right over here. Now, they capture the Sinai Peninsula and the west bank of the Jordan River as well. They get the Golan Heights. They also get Jerusalem. That's going to be big right there, the fact that they get Jerusalem. Now, in 1973, the Arabs are going to surprise attack Israel on Yom Kippur. For those of you who do not know, it's one of the biggest holy days for Jewish individuals, Yom Kippur. Now, that surprise attack on Israel on Yom Kippur is going to be big because the United States will then join Israel's side in this particular conflict right here. That is not going to sit well with a lot of Arabs. In fact, it's going to anger a lot of Arabs, and eventually the United Nations will arrange a ceasefire. However, in 1973, with the United States siding with Israel on this particular issue, a lot of the modern day conflicts that we have concerning the Middle East are going to come out of this. And when I say we, I mean the United States. The last slide, well, here we go. In 1979, you're going to have the Camp David Accords. That's where you're going to see Egypt finally recognize Israel as a country. Now, Egypt finally recognizes Israel as a country, so they receive the Sinai Peninsula back from Israel. In fact, this is such a big deal right here that the president of Egypt at the time is going to be killed by an Islamic extremist because they are upset by the peace agreement. Palestinians are going to launch an uprising a couple years later in 1987, and you're going to start seeing a series of terrorist attacks against Israel. This is very common for the area. There's a lot of conflict between the two sides, even now in 2020. So that intifada, that uprising in 1987, still continues to this day. Now, in 1993, you're also going to have the Oslo Peace Accords, where you see Israel give Palestinians self-rule in the West Bank as well as the Gaza Strip. If you take a look at the map on the left-hand side, you'll be able to see just how small of areas this is. So it's not a good thing where in small condensed areas, you have a lot of rivalry. Ultimately, what you'll see is assassinations, a lot of killings, and a lot of negativity. continue on with the Why Can't We Be Friends assignment. You'll keep learning about this right here. And I'll talk to all of you later. See ya.